All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And thanks for joining our workshop on improving PDF accessibility. I appreciate you taking the time to attend, especially on this snow-filled, unseasonably cold St. Patrick's Day. So I will introduce myself. I am Amanda Hirsch. I am the Assistant Director of Teaching Excellence and Support in the Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning at NIU. I've been teaching college writing and literature for almost 18 years, and I've been with CITL for 7 years. Before joining CITL, I started my journey at NIU as a graduate teaching assistant in the English department, where I earned my master's and my PhD in English while teaching first-year comp and literature survey courses and serving as an academic advisor to English majors and minors. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, you can feel free to post those in the chat thread and I will address them as they come up. So to set some expectations at the beginning, today's session is intended to provide a practical overview rather than an in-depth technical training. Tools like Adobe Acrobat Pro include a wide range of accessibility features, and fully mastering them can take significant time and practice. So because of that, we're not going to be going too deeply into every feature or advanced remediation technique, but instead the goal of this workshop is to focus on the most useful starting points for faculty and for staff. We'll talk about why PDF accessibility matters, how to quickly check whether a document may have accessibility issues, and how to address some of the most common problems. We'll also look at how to use Blackboard Ally's PDF quick fixes, which can resolve certain issues directly within Blackboard. And we'll review a few basic accessibility tools in Adobe Acrobat Pro that can help evaluate and improve our documents. The overall aim is to give you some practical strategies and awareness so that you can begin improving the accessibility of your PDFs that you share with students or with staff, other faculty, and even small changes like ensuring that documents are readable, that they're properly structured, that they're usable with assistive technologies can make course materials and any material significantly more usable for a wide range of learners and users. So why does PDF accessibility matter in the first place? Accessible PDFs benefit everyone when we think about course design or just think about universal design perspectives. Universal design focuses on creating materials that work well for the widest possible range of learners or people from the start, rather than just making accommodations only after barriers or accommodations requests appear. So when PDFs are created with accessibility in mind, they become easier to use in several ways. Properly structured PDFs are easier to navigate, especially in longer documents, because students can move through sections more efficiently. They're also searchable, which allows students to quickly find things like key terms or passages or concepts rather than having to scan through the entire document. And in addition to that, accessible PDFs can be used with text-to-speech and screen reader technologies, which helps to provide alternative ways for students to engage with the materials. So for example, when a document is accessible, students using assistive technologies like JAWS or other screen reading tools can listen to course readings instead of relying solely on visual reading. And this can be essential for students who are blind or have low vision, but it can also support students with learning disabilities or attention challenges, or those who simply benefit from listening while reading along. So throughout the workshop today, we're going to look at more closely at what makes a PDF accessible and how to check for those elements. And the goal here, again, is to just highlight why accessibility matters before we move into those practical steps for improving it. So first, we'll get out of the way what the law says. So we have the Americans with Disabilities Act Title II requirements that are coming up. They're coming due in April. So we'll talk about that before we move further into the practical steps of improving PDFs. So understanding that context, the broader context and around digital accessibility is going to be important. So in April 2024, the US Department of Justice finalized updates to Title II of the ADA. And these updates clarify that public entities, including public universities like NIU, have to ensure that their digital content and technologies are accessible to individuals with disabilities. So for institutions like NIU, this means accessibility applies not just to physical spaces, but also to our websites, to our online systems, and to our digital course materials. The rule establishes that WCAG 2.1 level AA as the technical accessibility standard that public institutions are expected to meet. So in practical terms, that means that digital materials that we create and share with students or with the public, such as Blackboard content, PDFs, PowerPoint slides, other instructional and institutional documents, should be usable by people who rely on assistive technologies. So for us, for NIU, the compliance deadline for these requirements is April 24th, 2026. So that might sound very close, and it is. And accessibility improvements do take time, particularly because many course materials have accumulated probably over the years. Sorry, just muting some people. So this is where faculty play an important role. Faculty members create a large portion of the digital content that students interact with. So things like syllabi and readings and lecture slides, assignments, other documents that might be PDFs. And under the updated rule, any materials distributed through university systems like Blackboard should meet accessibility standards so that students can perceive, navigate, and interact with them effectively. So for PDFs specifically, accessibility typically means that the document contains machine-readable text, a logical structure with headings, appropriate tagging, and I'll go over what that means, alternative text for images and figures, and a clear reading order. And these elements allow assistive technologies like screen readers to interpret the document correctly. You might also hear accessibility discussed in terms of 4 broad principles. Content should be perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So in teaching context, that can translate to practices like ensuring text is readable, images include alt text, videos are captioned, materials can be navigated with assistive technology, and documents have a clear and consistent structure. So the key takeaway is that accessibility is becoming a standard expectation for digital course materials, and creating accessible content from the start by using things like heading styles and adding alt text and exporting properly structured PDFs, checking files with tools like Blackboard Ally or Acrobat's Accessibility Checker can prevent a lot of issues before they reach students. Support's also available on campus, so units like ours, Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning, DoIT, Accessibility Services, and the Disability Resource Center can help guide faculty in improving the accessibility of their course materials. So while compliance is one reason that institutions are focusing on this area, especially right now, accessibility also aligns with broader goals around inclusive teaching and equitable access to learning. So when course materials are designed to be accessible, they tend to be clearer, they tend to be more navigable, and more usable for a wider range of students. So why this is a good thing for students in teaching: accessible materials mean that all students can participate fully. So it's good for equity, for inclusion, for learning outcomes. Also, it reduces barriers, whether they be visual or cognitive or navigational, which helps to improve usability and satisfaction for our students, and fewer would need special accommodations if that baseline is accessible. Accessible design often also aligns with Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, principles. So things like clear headings, meaningful alt text, navigable documents, they help everyone. Demonstrating the university is committed to accessibility sends a strong message about institutional values, inclusion, and student-centeredness as well. So NIU's mission emphasizes equity, inclusion, and student success, and meeting these standards aligns directly with those values. Accessible content supports people like first-generation students who benefit from clear, navigable materials. Students with temporary or situational impairments, like a broken arm or low bandwidth or glare. Neurodiverse learners who benefit from structured, readable documents. So by designing accessible course materials now, faculty can demonstrate NIU's ongoing commitment to reducing barriers and serving all students equitably. So I have a question, what's meaningful alt text? So alt text is for things like images or figures in a PDF. And meaningful alt text means that you are describing what is in that image or what is in that figure in a way that someone who cannot see it and is using assistive technology understands what is going on there, the importance of what that figure is or what that image is. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's talk about scanned PDFs, because I think this is probably one of the biggest problems with a PDF is if it's a scanned PDF. And this is where we tend to see a lot of accessibility issues. So scanned PDFs are typically images of document pages rather than files that contain machine readable text. So because screen readers rely on actual text data that's embedded in a document, they cannot interpret the words in an image-only PDF, which scanned PDFs tend to be. There are some caveats to that. I know that when you're scanning in the library, for example, the scanners there will OCR the PDF as they're scanning. So it depends on how you're scanning the document too, or how it was scanned originally. So if you're not scanning it, but somebody else scanned it, how is that scanned? And is that PDF accessible? So that's what you need to find out. So if it's an image-only PDF, though, assistive technologies like JAWS or NVDA or VoiceOver, they can't read the document content aloud. And when text is presented only as an image, assistive technologies can't programmatically identify or interpret that content. So that's what makes them inaccessible. In addition, the visual quality of scanned PDFs can vary widely. So if it's a poor scan, like those that are skewed or have low resolution or low contrast, they may be difficult for even sighted users to read and can reduce the accuracy of automated text recognition too. Adobe's accessibility documentation explains that low quality scans often lead to OCR errors. So even if you're using like Blackboard Ally or Adobe Acrobat Pro to automatically OCR your document, if it's a poor quality scan, there can be OCR errors there, which can produce incorrect or fragmented text in the document. So to make an image-based PDF accessible, the document needs to be processed with optical character recognition, or OCR. OCR software analyzes the scanned image and it converts detected characters into machine readable text. And that creates that text layer that screen readers can access. Tools like Adobe Acrobat Pro's Recognize Text feature or automated accessibility services like Blackboard Ally's alternative formats, they can perform that conversion. But again, that is if you have a good quality scan, there will be fewer errors. If it's a poor quality scan, there might be more errors there. So just because it's OCR doesn't necessarily mean that it's accessible if there's a lot of errors there. And then once it is OCR, that's not the last step. So after the OCR is applied, then you should also review the document for accuracy and make sure that it's properly tagged so that headings, lists, reading order are correctly interpreted by assistive technologies. And we'll talk about that. So how do you check if your PDF is accessible? Accessible in a PDF means that text can be selected or copied. It's not just an image. It's screen reader friendly. There's proper tagging. There's good structure. So for example, again, scanned pages can be image only. It could score very low. And we have a few options for checking our PDF accessibility, and you might want to check in multiple ways because there are things that maybe some programs might catch and some might not. So Adobe Acrobat Reader is free for everybody, and you can open the PDF, you can try highlighting the text, you can try using read aloud, you can check the document properties, which is under help, and then there's an accessibility report if that's available. Because you work for NIU, you should have access to Adobe Acrobat Pro, and you can use the accessibility tool there. You can do a full check for accessibility using Adobe Acrobat Pro, and it will generate a report of issues, and then you can fix those issues. You can also use Blackboard Ally. So when the PDF is uploaded in a course, in your course materials, or you can use the direct submission from the institution page. Ally will automatically give it an accessibility score, so low, medium, high, perfect, which is very rare, and it'll show you some of the issues there. Other tools, Microsoft Word, you can use to, you can convert your PDF into a Microsoft Word document, see if it converts properly, or there might be open source PDF editors out there that you could use as well. So you might be wondering whether generative AI might be able to solve this problem. And in some cases, it can help extract text from scanned PDFs. But it's also important to understand what's actually happening behind the scenes there. So a scanned PDF, again, is essentially a set of images rather than a document that contains machine readable text. So when AI tools extract text from those images, they're performing a task similar to OCR, to optical character recognition. And the system, what the system's doing is analyzing the shapes of the letters in the image and converting them into digital text that a computer can interpret. And a lot of modern tools do combine OCR with machine learning or AI models already to improve accuracy and recognize more complex layouts. So like Adobe Acrobat Pro, Google Document AI, other document processing systems can do similar things by analyzing scanned pages and generating text from them. But extracting the text alone doesn't automatically make a document accessible. Screen readers rely not just on the text, but also on the structure of the document. So things like headings, lists, tables, the correct reading order. So accessible PDFs include tags and structural information that tell assistive technologies how the content is organized. And I'll tell you an example of that in a minute. So AI can help convert scanned images into readable text, but the document would still need to be reviewed and properly tagged if it's still a PDF. Or if you're converting it into like a Word document, using that to generate the text, and then copy and pasting it into a Word document, for example, for shorter documents, you would need to then do some more work with that. And we have a whole workshop on Microsoft Word and Microsoft tools and making your documents accessible in those. So AI can help with the first step. It can help recover the text, just like OCRing can help with that, same thing. But again, additional accessibility work is usually still required there. So this slide just highlights a few quick checks that you can use to evaluate whether a PDF is likely to be accessible. The first question is, can you select and search text? If you try highlighting the text and nothing happens, or the whole page gets highlighted, that's usually a sign that the document is image only, which often happens when something's been scanned with a scanner that is not set up to OCR the document as it scans. So in that case, the PDF doesn't contain real text that the screen reader can read. So it would need to go through OCR, the optical character recognition, or be recreated from an original source file like a Word document or a PowerPoint, which tends to produce a lot cleaner of accessibility, but that's not always possible. So next we want to consider whether the document is tagged. Tags provide structural information that assistive technologies rely on. So they define elements like paragraphs. So there's a symbol for paragraph, there's symbols for headings, different heading levels, lists, tables, so that a screen reader can understand how the content is organized and convey that to the person who is using the screen reader. Closely related to tagging is reading order. So even if all the text is present, the order in which it's read obviously matters. Screen readers move through the document based on the underlying structure, not necessarily the way things look visually on a page. So if the reading order is not correct, then the content may be announced in a confusing or fragmented or nonsensical way. You'll also want to look at how images and decorative elements are handled. Informational images should have meaningful alternative text, alt text, so that users who can't see the image can still understand its purpose. There are sometimes decorative images, though. They're meaningless. They aren't required to understand anything, or they're not trying to represent anything meaningful. So those can be marked as decorative so that they're skipped by screen readers rather than read aloud unnecessarily. Another important thing to check is whether headings are properly marked up. Sometimes headings are only styled visually, and this goes for, all kinds of documents, including Word documents, but, larger font, bold text, a different color, but within the data, they're not actually tagged as headings in that document structure. And screen readers often navigate documents by jumping between headings, so that proper heading markup is going to make it a lot easier to move through the longer documents. A practical tip is to use the accessibility checker or accessibility report in tools like Adobe Acrobat Pro early in your workflow. Running those checks can quickly identify some common issues like those missing tags or alt text before the document is shared with our students. And then it can also be helpful to think of PDFs not just as static or print-like files, but as digital documents with a structure. So when that structure is created intentionally, it supports things like navigation and readability and overall usability for a much wider range of learners. So we'll talk next about Anthology. Well, this should say Blackboard. I forgot to change that. They've changed back to Blackboard, so we'll have to get used to that again. But we'll talk about the instructor feedback. So you'll probably notice those little gauges next to any documents that you've uploaded that tell you your accessibility scores or accessibility gauge. And then you click on that and it will take you to the instructor feedback and tell you, what is going on with that. So we now have access to some PDF quick fixes in Blackboard Ally as of this past October. So with PDF quick fixes, there's 3 different remediation options that instructors can use within their the Ally instructor feedback panel. When Ally identifies accessibility issues in a PDF, it doesn't just report the problem anymore. It also provides these few limited, for now, quick fixes that you can apply immediately. One example is a missing document title. The title is important because screen readers often announce it when a document's opened, and that helps users to understand what the file contains. If the title's missing, Ally allows the instructor to enter one directly into the feedback panel and apply the fix. And there's a few small formatting rules. The title can't consist only of special characters. It should not end with a period. It should not include a file extension, and it should not exactly match the file name. So those guidelines help ensure that it functions properly as document metadata instead of just repeating the file name. Another common issue is missing document language. Screen readers rely on the language setting to pronounce words correctly and apply the appropriate speech rules. So if that's not defined, pronunciation can be inaccurate or difficult to understand. Ally allows instructors to select the correct language from a drop-down menu and apply that directly within the tool. Ally also provides a quick fix for scanned PDFs. So if the document is scanned or image-based, instructors can choose the option to preview and apply OCR, and that process converts the scanned images into machine-readable text, which allows screen readers to access the content and also enables features like text selection and searching. Before you actually apply the OCR fix, you will be prompted. You'll have the option to download the original scanned version of the file if you don't already have that saved. So that we recommend if you want to keep a copy for your reference, because once that OCR process is applied and that fix is saved, Ally replaces that original file with the newly processed version. So if you need a copy of that un-OCR'd file for some reason, you can download it before it saves that fix. So overall, those quick fixes are designed to address some of the most common accessibility barriers in PDFs. They provide a straightforward way to improve the document accessibility without requiring you to leave the Blackboard or the Ally interface or use additional software. So hence, quick fixes. Another important concept to understand is PDF tagging, and I've been mentioning that. But what does that mean? In an accessible PDF, content elements, as I mentioned, like headings, paragraphs, lists, tables, and images, they're assigned things called tags that describe their role in the document. So they form a structured tree that assistive technologies use to interpret the content, and that allows the screen reader users to navigate efficiently. For example, by moving between those headings, by identifying lists, by understanding when they're inside of a table. They also help to define the logical reading order of the document. So again, the visual layout of PDF doesn't always match the order in which assistive technologies will encounter the content or interpret the content. So tagging it properly ensures that that's presented in a logical sequence so that the document is read in that intended order. When a PDF originates from a scanned document, it typically starts out as a single page image. Even after the OCR is applied to recover the text, and this includes for if you're using Blackboard Ally to OCR it, the document might still lack that proper structure. So for example, headings might simply appear as larger text instead of identified as headings. Lists or tables may not be correctly defined or may not have alt text. So that's why that OCR is just one step in the remediation process. Another practical distinction is that a scanned document behaves very differently from a properly structured PDF. So again, image-only PDF, it's like a photograph. It's difficult to edit, cannot be navigated by structure. So once we have that proper text layer and structure, our users, our students, can search within the document more effectively. So the most reliable way to produce, unfortunately, a well-structured PDF is to start with an accessible source document like a Word or a PowerPoint that already uses built-in heading styles. And lists and other structural elements and alt text. And then when the document's exported to PDF with tagging enabled, those structures are preserved. If the original source file is not available, you can still do remediation in tools like Adobe Acrobat Pro by reviewing the document's tags and adjusting them manually. That can involve adding any missing tags or correcting heading levels or fixing the reading order. But depending on the complexity of the document, that can be really time consuming. So because of that, it's usually more efficient, obviously, to create accessibility in the original document and then export it to a PDF rather than trying to retrofit accessibility after the fact. But again, not always possible, especially if we're talking about, you know, a scholarly article that you did not create yourself, that you're using and is a PDF. So let's talk a little bit about Adobe Acrobat Pro, just kind of a very wide level overview. It includes several built-in tools that can help identify and remediate accessibility issues in PDF documents. So these are just some of the most commonly used when working to improve a document's accessibility. So the accessibility checker is the first place to start. This tool scans the document. It generates a report identifying some potential accessibility problems like missing alt text, missing document language, an untagged document. It helps quickly surface those issues that might otherwise be difficult to identify manually. But the checker doesn't catch everything. Some flagged items might still require your human review. Another important setting is the document language. So in Acrobat, you can specify the primary language of the document. Screen readers, again, use this information to apply the correct pronunciation rules. The OCR tool also allows Acrobat to recognize text in scanned or image-based PDFs and convert it into machine-readable text. So again, essential when you're working with a scanned document that only includes images of text. Acrobat also provides an auto tag document feature. So if a PDF doesn't already contain tags after you've OCR'd it, this tool attempts to generate them automatically by analyzing the document's layout. So it can create a basic structure like identifying paragraphs and headings and lists, which you can then go ahead and refine manually. And then finally, there's an edit tags feature, and this allows you to view and modify the document's tag structure directly. So that's where you can correct your heading levels, you can adjust your reading order, you can add missing text for elements like images or tables. So auto tagging can be really helpful to provide that starting point, but reviewing and editing the tags is often necessary to just make sure that the structure accurately reflects the reading order. So this slide is just summarizing the general workflow for reviewing and improving a document's tag structure in Adobe Acrobat Pro, and I'll send you, everyone who's here, a follow-up email that includes links to resources for how to do these things. But in practice, the process involves opening the accessibility tools in Acrobat, examining the tag structure through the tags panel. That shows how Acrobat interprets the document structure, including headings, paragraphs, lists, tables, figures. And then reviewing that can help you determine whether the document's been tagged appropriately or whether you need to fix that. If a document is untagged, again, Acrobat has that auto tag document feature. So it can help to generate an initial tag structure automatically, and is a really useful starting point. So again, you'll want to review that after you do the auto tagging, but it's really helpful to get started. You may need to correct tags that were assigned incorrectly. You might need to confirm that headings follow that logical hierarchy. So you want it at H1 before an H2. So heading level 1 before heading level 2. And then the main goal of this process is just to ensure that the underlying structure matches the way that it's meant to be navigated. So a really important aspect of PDF accessibility is the reading order. And I've mentioned this, but what that refers to is the sequence in which the content is presented to our assistive technologies like screen readers. So if the reading order is correct, the document is read incorrect, the document might be read in a way that's confusing. So for example, a screen reader might encounter part of a paragraph before its heading, or read sidebars or captions or images before the main explanatory text that needs to come first. And that could make it difficult for readers to understand the intended flow of the information in the document. So again, you can use Adobe Acrobat Pro to review and adjust the reading order. There's a reading order tool that provides a visual overlay showing how Acrobat's interpreting the content of the page, and you can make adjustments. In some cases, elements that don't convey meaningful information, like if there's a decorative graphic or a repeated design element, you can mark that again as an artifact, and then the assistive technology will just ignore it as they're reading it out. So overall, our goal here is just to make sure that, you know, there's a logical flow that's being communicated to the reader. So a couple of elements that really significantly affect how understandable a document is for assistive technologies is headings and alt text. Headings provide that structural outline of a document, and I'm going to show you some examples in a minute, but screen readers often navigate by moving from heading to heading instead of listing or listening to the entire document sequentially. So that allows them to quickly locate the information that they need to understand how topics are organized. So again, we want to properly tag using levels like H1, H2, H3, so that we are understanding the hierarchy of the document, and the screen reading technology is understanding that. So a useful way to think about this is to imagine searching for one specific section in a textbook. A sighted reader would typically flip to the table of contents, or they might scan a page for the section headings rather than reading through the entire book from the beginning to the end to try to find the information that they need. So proper heading structure in a PDF provides a similar navigation mechanism for screen reader users, and that allows them to move efficiently through the document instead of having to listen to every single line of the text if they're looking for specific information. And then the other important element is the alternative text, or the alt text. So alt text provides a short description of images, charts, graphs, other visual elements, so that users who cannot see the image can still understand the information that it conveys. So the goal is to communicate the meaning or the takeaway of the visual in the context of the surrounding content. So another way to think about this is to imagine you're sitting in a lecture where the instructor projects a chart or a diagram on the screen, but never explains what it shows. If you couldn't see the screen clearly, you'd miss the key point that the visual was meant to communicate. So alt text is serving that similar function with screen reader users. When a visual appears in a document, the alt text provides the explanation that a sighted reader would normally get from looking at the image. So for example, if a graph is included to illustrate a trend, the alt text should briefly explain the trend rather than simply stating that the image is a graph. So we need to say, you know, what is this graph communicating to our sighted readers? And then how can we communicate that to readers who cannot see it? So if an image is purely decorative, again, and doesn't add that informational value, mark it like that so that assistive technology can skip it. When headings and alternative text are used correctly, they make a document easier to navigate. They ensure that all of that important information conveyed visually is still available to users who are relying on assistive technologies. So this slide just shows a few examples to help illustrate what good and poor practices look like for headings and alternative text. So when we're reviewing headings, a useful approach is to first look at the document visually. If you can, identify section titles and subsections that appear to function as headings, and then confirm that those elements actually are tagged as headings in the PDF structure. Ideally, those heading levels should reflect a logical organization. So a main section would be labeled as H1, subsections as H2, smaller subsections as H3. So the example on the slide shows a simple hierarchy, a main heading like workshop agenda, followed by a section of that heading as module 1, and then a smaller task level heading beneath it. So this type of structure creates a clear outline that assistive technologies can use for navigation. So in contrast, a common problem occurs when headings are only styled visually. For example, they're bolded or they're made larger, but they're still tagged as regular paragraphs in the document structure. So in that situation, the screen reader can't distinguish them from normal body text, which removes that navigational benefit. The same idea applies to alt text for images. Any image that conveys information like a chart, a diagram, a graph, should include a short description that communicates the meaning of the visual. So in the example here, the alt text describes the trend in the graph rather than simply stating that it is a graph. By comparison, the alt text like chart or leaving the description blank doesn't provide useful information to someone who cannot see the image, and then they're not going to have that information. It's also helpful to remember that these elements are often easier to implement in the original source document, like a Word or a PowerPoint, but can be added to PDFs later on as well. So nothing is unfixable, right? Yes, so that is the easiest way to do it. So if you're working from an original Word document, you should use the styles in the Word document to add headings and subheadings, heading levels. So that's the easiest way to do it, is to work from the original document in Microsoft Word or in PowerPoint, and then convert that file into a PDF, and it will retain all of that information. So if you would download a file that's already a PDF, the best way to start is to see if it's OCR'd first. If it is OCR'd, then you can open it in Adobe Acrobat Pro, and you can use you can view the tags there. And I'll send you instructions for how to do that. But you can view the tags there and check to see whether the tags are correct and you've got those heading structures. Great questions. So it isn't just, I'll send it later today. It isn't just screen reader accessibility that's important with our PDF documents. That's really important, and that's part of the Title II requirements. But the visual readability of documents is also important for all of our sighted students too. So accessibility is often discussed in the context of screen readers, assistive technologies, but visual readability is also an important component of accessibility. So if a document is difficult to see clearly, it creates barriers for many students, including those without diagnosed or formal disabilities. One common issue occurs with scanned PDFs, especially older scans or documents that have been copied multiple times. These files often have low contrast between the text and the background. So for example, the text may appear gray instead of black, or the page background may be darkened or uneven. And then when that contrast is low, the text becomes harder to distinguish from the background, which can make sustained reading difficult. Another issue could be blurred, faded, or distorted text. When those letters aren't sharp and clear, readers have to spend more effort just to recognize the words. So that's going to do something that we don't want, which is going to increase their cognitive load because students are focusing on deciphering the text rather than on understanding the content itself. And over time, that can also lead to things like eye strain and fatigue. Poor image quality can also affect focus and comprehension. So if the document appears fuzzy or uneven, readers might lose their place more easily. They might struggle to follow the flow of the material. And there is a few practical ways to reduce these issues. Again, whenever possible, and again, not always possible, it's better to export documents directly from the original source file like Word or PowerPoint rather than scanning a printed document. That preserves clean, high contrast text. If scanning is necessary, use high quality scan settings so that the text appears sharp and legible. If possible, you could use the scanner in the library so that it OCRs the document. It's also helpful to avoid any visual elements that might interfere with readability, like decorative watermarks or busy page backgrounds. A simple way to check visual readability is to view the document at a normal reading size and see whether it appears crisp and dark. The text appears crisp and dark. If the text looks gray or faint or fuzzy, it might be difficult for some students to read. And then we have a question about sans serif versus serif fonts. That's a great question. Sans serif fonts are better for digital materials. Serif fonts are better for printed materials. So you might run into, some more difficulty with reading PDF files if it's in a serif font, which it probably is, because usually if it's a PDF and it's a scanned document, it was created with the intent of being printed. So, if you're creating files, like if you're creating a Word document, if you're creating a PowerPoint that's intended to be displayed digitally, it's better for readability if you use a sans serif font. So overall here, the goal is straightforward. Documents should be clear, they should be high contrast, they should be easy to read so that students can focus their attention on understanding the material rather than struggling to see the material. So we have a few minutes. So if you want to, you can open up Blackboard and do an Ally PDF quick fix. So go to one of your classes that has a low scoring PDF file, or find a low scoring PDF file that you've uploaded to Blackboard somewhere. It could be in an organization as well. Write down what your accessibility percentage score is. So that you'll find that when you click the accessibility indicator next to the file. Then you will see that it needs some quick fixes. So try to find one that's low scoring. And then if you want to download the original file, you can do that before you apply the OCR. But if it asks you to apply the OCR, then go ahead and do that. And then write down your new accessibility score and tell us in the chat once you've done that and how much your score improved. So you can go ahead and do that if you want to. And I'll give you a minute just to get to Blackboard, but I will post a link in the chat. Sure that it's an actual hyperlink there. There we go. So if you can, go in there and see. And I'm going to go over Blackboard Ally fixes and how much they will actually change your score as you're doing that. So Ally provides, again, those 3 quick fixes, and they're hopefully going to come up with some more quick fixes as well and expand on this, but this is great for the time being. But one of the most significant issues I mentioned occurs with those scanned documents. So the scanned PDF is, again, an image rather than machine readable. So the Ally OCR quick fix is going to process that image and add that text layer so that the assistive technologies can read it. Before applying that fix, you can preview the result, you can approve it, and completing that step usually raises the Ally accessibility score. So if it's a scanned PDF that is completely no OCR, no tagging, it should have a score of 0 or close to it. And this will raise that score to about 66%. Another issue that I mentioned that Ally might flag is the missing document title. Again, important because it's usually the first piece of information that the screen reader announces when the document opens, and that helps readers understand what the file is and makes it easier to identify the documents. So while this only increases the ALI score slightly, it still provides some important context for screen reader users. It'll increase your score about 1%. And then the third common fix is the document language. So as I mentioned previously, the screen readers rely on that setting to pronounce words correctly. If it's not defined, they may interpret the text incorrectly. So setting that language improves the clarity of screen reader output and typically increases the ALI score by about 5%. So again, we've got 0 to 66% for OCRing the documents, another 1% for setting a PDF title, and then another 5% for setting the language of your PDF. So you can get yourself up into the yellow using the PDF quick fixes. Probably not going to get yourself into green because you'll need to add the tags for that and make sure that everything else is correct. But you can start with this, and then you could download that file that has been OCR'd and that you've added the title to and added your language to, and then you can open that with Adobe Acrobat Pro and run their accessibility checker and have a good leg up. Yeah, I can show you. Let me open up my Blackboard. And I believe I have one actually from the last time that I did this. Let's see here. It's in one of my sandboxes. Yep, there it is. One second. All right, so let me. So it's uploading right now. Hopefully it'll do it relatively quickly. And it'll take a minute for it to actually show. I've got one down here that's kind of medium that I can show you while that one's working. So this says that it doesn't have headings. And then it says how to add headings. And it kind of gives you a little bit of basic information. Can you get a hold of the original editable version? No. Can this document be found in the library? Let's say no. So this document needs further attention. So you can use alt formats for this document, but that's not a final solution. So it'll give you a link to browse help. Let me go back and see if this other, okay, so yeah, we've got red, it's low, PDF is scanned, and I scanned this PDF myself using my phone because it was only for my use, not to be used for anybody else. So this is the OCRing, so you can apply the OCR here, or you can click learn how to fix PDFs, how to avoid the issues in the future. And then I'm going to click preview and apply. So it's going to prepare the preview. Oh, might be having some issues with connection. Yeah, something's going on. So what it'll do is you would see this go from 0% to 66%. So for some reason it's acting up right now. Let me see if I refresh. Maybe that'll help. It might just be my internet. I know campus internet has been in and out today. Or it might be because I just uploaded this file. Yeah, so it might just be because I just uploaded this file, but it can tell you what this means, why avoid it. So some of the explanation that I've already given. Let me try one more time. You can also fix outside of Blackboard Ally and then upload there. So let me see if it'll work for me now. It's not working for me right now. But you can try this on your own. You can try it later too if it's not working right now. Okay, so within Adobe, you can click this prepare. It's under all tools, prepare for accessibility. You can also click scan in OCR. You can enhance the scan file. And all pages recognize text. So this is going to OCR, and then you click enhance. And then if I go to prepare for accessibility, you can automatically tag the PDF. So you want to OCR it before you tag it. You can also change reading options. You can check for accessibility. You can open an accessibility report, check for accessibility. You're checking the documents, start checking, and it gives you all of these issues on the right-hand side. So tag PDF failed, it's not tagged. Logical reading order needs a manual check. There's no language, there's no title, and color contrast would need a manual check. So again, there's no tags, there's no alt text for figures. So we would need to then work on automatically tagging the PDF after we've OCR'd it. And then you can also do fix the reading order. So once you have those tags, then you would want to check this for the reading order. Previous slide. So some additional resources and links here, and you can click these if you're in the session today, you can click them right on your screen and go to them, but I will also send this list to you in my follow-up email later this afternoon. So there's a Blackboard Ally instructor guide, there's a new PDF quick fixes guide, and that includes a lot of the similar information that I gave you today. There's also an Adobe Help Center, how to create and verify PDF accessibility, how to tag and edit document structure, and then a Section 508 guide on common PDF tags and their usage. So all of those links will be sent to all of you who are here live today. I also wanted to give a shout out to the NIU Disability Resource Center in the Peters Campus Life Building in Suite 180. They are open Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30, and there's contact information there. They also have resources for faculty and staff, so you can click on that link on your screen, and I will send that out as well. But if you do have students who have documented disabilities, they can help you make your content accessible for those students. So definitely feel free to reach out to them if you have accessibility issues for your students. If you have any questions, go ahead and stick around. Otherwise, enjoy the day, enjoy the muckiness the later this week when we get back up to 60 degrees. But thank you for attending today's workshop. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to stick around or reach out to me. I'll again send out an email to everyone who attended today's workshop with links to the workshop recording, as well as all of the resources that I mentioned today and a few more that I think you'll find helpful. So again, have a great rest of your week and stay warm.